We have set up a Slido for any questions. We have a bit of time at the end to go through questions, so I'll make sure I read them out to Dr. Sharp and we can go through them. There's a QR code there. I will also pop a link in the chat in a minute, so you can add your questions there as we go and we'll address them at the end. And I'll hand over to Kanchan, who's our chapter lead for Dubai, to go through a bit of an introduction into the female product lead, who we are, and all that good stuff. And I will see you in a bit. Over to you, Kanchan.
Thank you, Anna. I hope all of you can hear me. We're very good to be here. As Anna said, I joined the female product lead a few months ago, and I'm joining in from Dubai. And it's really exciting to be part of this great initiative. So female product lead is all about inclusive product leadership, right? It's about empowering women and all underrepresented classes of society in the product world. It's about how we can support, nurture each other, and provide opportunities for growth, and most importantly, provide a means, a platform to have some meaningful conversations and make long-lasting connections. So this is our leadership group. We have a lot of experience together from all different fields of product, and starting with Bex, who is our founder, and Anna has already introduced herself. From time to time, our leadership group comes together and it hosts a lot of events, which is what you can see here in the next page. Of course, today, Dr. Chloe Sharp is going to have a very interesting talk with us. We have, I think, another event tomorrow also, and many throughout the month. And apart from this, we also have a very active Slack channel. So I would really invite you all to join in. Just all you need to do is go to the website, ask to join the female product lead group, and you will be added to the Slack channel. We are also now trying to expand into other regions, like myself in Dubai. So far, I haven't found a lot of people here in FPL, but that's my motive, is to expand FPL into the Middle East and Asia region. So if any of you are from around here, just give me a shout out. And please do check out the Female Product Leads events page for even more interesting, lots more interesting talks to come along. And yeah, now on to Anna back for a quick introduction, I think, of Dr. Shaw.
Thanks, Kanchan, for the quick intro into the female product lead. I've popped the link to join in the chat if anyone's here who isn't yet a member. And yeah, we're here for the main event with Dr. Sharp. She's the author of the book Make Products That Matter. She's also a exited co-founder and has a PhD in sociology. So she's got loads of experience to share with us. Yeah, I'll leave it to her to properly introduce herself in a longer form and get into the topic of today's event. Really looking forward to this. So over to you, Chloe.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen. Brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really interested in talking about this topic today. It's something that I think as I kind of learn more and more about it, I just find that it just really infiltrates every part of life. So looking forward to going through it with you today. So see if I can. Sorry, just having an issue with that. Sorry, 1 second. Just gonna try and share again. Right, here we go. Should be able, yeah, you should be able to see that. Okay, so a little bit about myself. So I'm the founder of Sharp Insights, and I've been in product development for over a decade in lots of different guises, from product management to growth and marketing, design, funding and insights as well, like from design sprints all the way through to more in-depth research studies on user and market research sort of sides of things. And in terms of how I've used storytelling, I've used it in so many different ways. So I've used it for research, really understanding people's stories. And that's the bit that I find really interesting about doing research, which is just kind of getting a little bit of a peek into someone else's life and seeing how they approach something, or like from a user research perspective, maybe how they use something or what their challenges in that particular area. Or if I'm learning it about them from like an evaluation perspective, then I might kind of understand how they've used something and how, what change it's made. So I just find that really interesting. And I use storytelling from a technical writing perspective as well. So there's different structures and formats that are required for these, but a story is still really important. So I use technical writing for, well, the kind of technical writing that I do is around grants, tenders, reports, papers, business cases, and over time I've found that stats and logic don't always land. So with grants, for example, I usually suggest that right at the very beginning that there is some kind of story as to the motivation for like developing that particular innovation or founding the company or whatever it might be, because I think that emotional part and having that right at the very beginning is important, just to kind of set the scene. I mean, that wouldn't really sort of sit well with like a report or paper or anything, but I think just kind of having a little bit of your personality in there is important, and the reasoning behind maybe doing a project or something. Also, I'm the author of Make Products That Matter. So this is a guide for doing research across the whole product development life cycle, from idea to launch and post-launch. So there's the Lemonade Van, which is a case study. So that kind of follows their story throughout the book to bring the theory to life, essentially. Also, I am a musician, and I kind of dabble in the world of songwriting. So I really like to go to School of Song, which is based in America, and just hear from some of the greats like Laura Marling and A.G. Cook, who's the producer of Charlie XCX's songs, and just kind of hear and understand their approach when it comes to songwriting and production. And a lot of it comes back to the story. And for songwriting, it's more kind of sensory. So, what is that person feeling, smelling, touching, whatever it might be, just to really enable the listener or reader to feel really immersed in that person's life. One of the things that I've recently learned from is City Lit, which has done a poetry course. And from there, I learned all about the idea of minimalist and maximalist sort of approaches to writing. And the thing that kind of stuck out to me on that one was, with minimalist poetry, that's writing as fewer words as possible, but each word has a purpose, and that kind of translates across the grants and stories in general. Just making sure that each word has a place, and it's intentional. And finally, the MKU / Cranfield University, they hold a professional skills conference every year for their apprentices. And so I've done a leadership skill workshop there around storytelling. And that was really fascinating because I think it was about sort of 2-3 hour workshop. And at the end of it, everybody got to share their stories within this particular format that I had outlined. And I'm going to share that workbook with you as well, kind of at the end. But it was just really fascinating how some people's stories were told for the first time there. So storytelling I just find fascinating, and it just can be applied in every area of life, really. So this is myself and my daughter. This is going to be going back more than 12 years ago now. She's going to be 13 in November. But books and stories have really been a big part of our life, and reading as well is just so important for children. But stories are just everywhere. kind of when I was thinking about storytelling and stories in more detail, we have stories in our heads about what we tell ourselves, maybe about what we can and can't do, and about who we are. Also, culturally, within an organization, stories are part of culture, and there might be some legendary stories. If you're kind of starting from scratch as a new team member, you might hear some of these stories, and that they kind of form part of the culture. Also, from a marketing branding perspective, if marketing and branding is done really well, there's usually a really strong story behind that. From a UX product perspective, stories are part of that process, like user stories, storyboards, and also when we innovate, it's good to have different perspectives and lots of different stories to understand, bigger picture, and it can spark ideas. So stories are just amazing, and storytelling matters as well for product leaders. So I'm going to go into that in more detail, and also share some storytelling frameworks and how to craft your story and tell your story as well. So first of all, why is storytelling so important? So I read this book quite a while ago, and it really brought to light why stories land with us so well. So the first quote is they're both from Harari, but sort of separate sort of sources. So the first one is, storytelling is our superpower. We're the only species with the ability to use language, not just to describe things we see, taste, and touch, but also to invent stories about things that don't exist. And what is interesting here is that we don't just see and describe concrete things, the things that are right in front of us. We can talk about things that are completely abstract, so ideas and things that, visions of things that might happen in the future, and that's just completely unique to humans. Also, stories are the greatest human invention. People need stories in order to cooperate. So that's another thing that he really brings out in his book, which is why humans have done so well, and that's how we just cooperate and collaborate so well. And part of that is because of storytelling. But he notes here that there's something else very important, which is they can change the way that they cooperate by changing the stories they believe. So it just kind of shows that there's something there in terms of the narrative, taking control of the narrative, or how narrative can influence behavior and action. Also, I've got some other quotes which speak to storytelling in the workplace from a product perspective, but also as being human. So Steve Jobs said the most powerful person in the world is a storyteller, because they're really explaining and bringing to life maybe a world or a vision, and everyone should be kind of brought into it because it might evoke particular action or change. Ariana Huffington says, people think in stories, not statistics, and marketers need to be master storytellers. And in terms of marketing, it's not just external marketing. It could be internal marketing as well, if you want to explain your story and bring people on board. Teresa Torres, who's big in product, if we focus on collecting stories in our customer interviews, opportunities will emerge from those stories. And that's something that I really enjoy when I'm analysing research, which is seeing crossover in different stories and understanding how different problems or how a problem is looked at from different perspectives, and how there's similarities as well. And then Gary V was saying, storytelling is by far the most underrated skill when it comes to business. I would agree with that to some extent. I have recently been coaching someone who wanted to have a bigger impact with their reports, because they felt that they put all this work and effort into their report writing, but it just they weren't being read and nothing was really happening. So what we started to do was to introduce the idea of storytelling. So it had a certain structure and like a summary, like a TLDR almost right at the very top, just to get it to speak to different audiences as well. So that's just kind of one example, which is how storytelling can really be like a skill that you can practice and hone in business. And also Harari here again says a human tribe with a good story was the most powerful thing in the world. And that kind of speaks to what he was saying in terms of cooperation and things. So storytelling for product leaders. So think of the last pitch or roadmap that you saw or talk that you remember. Odds are it wasn't about the perfect slide deck. It was probably their story that stuck with you. And this is kind of true from personal experience when I've heard talks where someone sort of said sometimes quite emotional story. I can still remember it years later because it was just so well told, essentially. So some of the challenges that we have as product leaders that can be almost remedied by storytelling are these three areas that Akash and Roshan Gupta have outlined. So they believe that storytelling is a product leader's superpower. So one of the problems and challenges that we might face is just not having enough impact or not being very clear. Secondly, not being able to articulate that impact clearly, and also not having others vouch for your impact and the work that you're doing. So you end up being, speaking just for yourself, and other people aren't kind of backing you up. So storytelling can help with these three areas. So first of all, not having enough impact. So by connecting individual efforts to larger business outcomes can be important. So if you kind of think about the narrative and what the business is trying to achieve, then kind of always linking it back to the audience and what they want to hear from the story can be important. Also, earlier we kind of spoke about that abstract and concrete, sort of tangible. So some people do struggle with abstract thinking. So making it as tangible and as actionable as possible that can help you make more impact. And I have found that I have found it useful. So for example, at the moment I'm working with a client, and there is an idea of what we want to do, but what I did is I made it tangible and actionable by putting it all onto a planner, essentially, and just having it broken down, just to make it very tangible and actionable and something that we can kind of refer to. And also, before I did that, I kind of spoke to why we're doing it and what the overall goal is, and it all linked back to the business outcomes. Also creating a sense of shared purpose that transcends team boundaries as well. So shared purpose speaks to that kind of coordination, cooperation sort of side of things when it comes to storytelling. Document wins and learnings in real time. If you're failing to articulate your impact, this can create evidence and data for your story, I guess. And that's something that I found useful personally, because when I wanted to have a pay rise or a promotion, and I've asked for it, then I've been able to say I've done this, and this has been the output and the outcome, and I had I've been keeping like a log of it over time, just to kind of show everything that I'd done and why I was adding value and deserve this pay rise or promotion. Yeah, brag sheets. Yeah, exactly. Meg, sorry. Also, framing outcomes in terms of business value. So business leaders just want to understand what you're doing in terms of adding value to the company. And this is really important in product because there is, I'll refer to it later on, but I saw that there's the Atlassian product 2026 that's just come out. And so it just shows that product has got pressure to drive business results and to make profit. So if you want to pitch something and you know what their outcome is and what their drivers are, then you can kind of link it to that and how you're adding value, rather than talking about the technical details and the features and I guess the granular sort of information. And also creating simple, memorable narratives for yourself, which kind of links that brag sheet, I suppose, in a way. So then others can repeat it and champion you as well. So you might say, oh yeah, I did this and it led to that, and it's just simple. So then maybe later on, which is for this one, they remember those stories and they remember what you did and the impact that you had. And they might even mention it if you do 180 feedback, and they gather information from your peers. So having your peers vouch for you can help you if you want to go for that promotion and all that kind of thing, but they can also back you with the action that you want to drive. So your stories kind of should feel authentic and very clear. So then I guess the vision and the drive and the actions kind of spread, so you're not just speaking on your own and trying to do it on your own. So this is so I'm sorry, some of my slides are quite busy. But yeah, so here, I did add this one earlier on today because I just saw it pop up on LinkedIn. But product teams are under pressure to drive profit and business results. So stories are important in product to drive action, create alignment, and to build empathy. So I guess the message here is it's about telling good stories that have elements of emotion in them. It shouldn't necessarily all be about stats and I guess things that don't have as much emotion sort of attached to them. Okay, so in terms of how I've used storytelling in leadership, so I have found that if I over-explain myself, I'm doing myself an injustice because people stop listening, essentially. So having like concise stories or a concise message has been important for me to make an impact. So I use different frameworks, which I'm going to explain soon, and I try and be as concise as I can, and then I stop talking. So sometimes it can, if there's space or silence, it can be tempting to fill it with, explaining or justifying something. But sometimes silence can be useful, particularly if you've taken control of the narrative and you've got a really compelling story. Maybe it's good just to give them a little bit of time just to digest it. Also, I've used storytelling to pitch ideas and really understood what it is that the stakeholders are looking for, and use the language that they've used to get it. So I suppose they understand what I'm trying to achieve, like within the political sphere of that organization. Also, I found it useful for personal brand. So within an organization and outside of an organization, I use stories to help people understand what it is that I do. So that can be useful within an organization, particularly if you want to get involved in different projects and things, sort of maybe a bit outside of your own team. And I've mentioned the performance review there. So in terms of common storytelling frameworks, this is a typical story arc that you might be familiar with. And I want to use a fairy tale to kind of explain what I mean here. So if we use a Three Little Pigs story, then in terms of setting the scene and the characters, that's done right at the very beginning. And then the problem is that they don't have a house to live in because they've been, I think the way that I think about it is that they've been chucked out of their house by their mum. I don't know if that actually is how it has happened, but they need to build a house each, and we all know how that goes. And then the climax of the story is, the pig that builds that house of bricks, the wolf just doesn't want to blow the house down anymore and uses the chimney. So we've got the falling action, which is, I think there's different versions of the story, but he falls down the chimney, he's defeated, and then the denouement is, pigs are safe and there's no more wolf. So that's just a very quick overview as to how that story arc works. And then we've also got the 3-act structure, which is very so commonly used. If you kind of look out for this, when you're watching TV or whatever, this happens over and over. So there's action that happens, and then the characters might stop and pause and reflect on it, and then there's more action and things. So here, using minimalist sort of poetry approach, we've got this story which has come from Phil Wang on Taskmaster recently. So an ogre is hungry, ate a child, it was his. I mean, it's quite a dark story, but it just kind of shows here very succinctly the setup, the confrontation, and the resolution. And then we've also got Hemingway's 6-word story, which is for sale, baby shoes, never worn. So you can kind of see I wanted to illustrate this 3-act structure very succinctly, using as few words as possible, sort of going to that minimalist poetry approach that I mentioned earlier. Also, here we've got the 4 C's. So we've got the context, conflict, climax, and culture. Closure. So it's similar to the story arc that we saw earlier with the 3 little pigs. So we've got the character, who's the user, the conflict, which might be their pain point or their problem, and then the climax, so that's the solution for that use case, and then the closure is the product's value. So that's how you would apply the 4 C's here. So in terms of storytelling frameworks for persuading and influencing, I'm just going to go through some of these frameworks sort of fairly quickly, just aware of time here, but I will kind of explain how I use these as well. So for persuasion and buy-in for big visions, there's the hero's journey that you could use. So here you're setting the scene, you're presenting the challenge or the opportunity, they show the struggles. Then there's a turning point, so you've got the key action that's taken, and then there's the transformation at the end. So I use this kind of structure if I'm putting together a business case, or might have this in mind when I'm thinking about a grant, because I want to set the scene. So what does this world look like? What's the problem here? What's the challenge? What's the opportunity? And then it's good to kind of show the struggles for the customer, essentially. So why would they, when you go on to explain what the solution is, you understand more why they need it. And then the key action here would be, ideally they'd have this solution available, and then the result would be transformational, and it would have, this impact, etc. So another thing to note here is that your listener or your reader is the hero. So if you're kind of writing or using this approach, using that sort of grant funding example, you might also make the grant funder the hero of the story as well. So you might explain how it's going to feed into creating jobs and their strategies and that kind of thing. So you're also making it about them, which is also important for tenders and bid writing, in that you have those winning themes. You're making it about about the customer. So it's not all about yourself. You're kind of making it about them, which is good for those big visions. Then there's quick pitching. So this might be something that you use maybe in a sort of meeting situation if you want to pitch an idea or something. So you've got the problem, agitate, solve. This is one approach that you can use to show the consequences of inaction. So this is one way of persuading, by saying that there's a pain point here, and then this is what's going to happen if we don't do anything about it, rather than presenting the solution. So I have used this approach for in some situations if I want to pitch an idea, and then showing as well, what would happen if we had our approach or product in place to solve it. If you're kind of using quick pitching, it's worth bearing in mind what questions you might get from your audience, because everyone's time poor, everyone's driving, well, particularly leaders, kind of thinking about what are you trying to do in terms of adding business value. So why are you showing me this? What do you need from me? How will we know if it works? So it kind of speaking to that audience piece that I mentioned in terms of understanding what it is that they need to see, and also being very clear as to what you need from them. This is another example of a concise, persuasive story, a framework that you can use, which is AND, so establishing the situation, showing the problem or the tension, and then that resolution and action. So I suppose in some ways it's kind of similar to music and songwriting, in that you create tension and then you have the resolution. So that's just another approach that you could use to persuasive sort of stories or pitching. So now what I wanted to move into is storytelling frameworks, just for just getting stuff done. So you might have heard of Storytelling Tactics by Steve Rawlings, and so he's got a whole system. I haven't used his cards before, but I thought his approach was quite interesting. That might be useful just to flag up for you here. So just kind of taking inspiration from his approach, just kind of making, if we're going to apply storytelling to sprints and feature planning, for example, it can help just frame the ask, I suppose, and the actions that you want them to take in a different way. So starting with the mission, so for a sprint review, starting with the mission, showing the journey and then the outcome, sharing the learning, and then connecting it again to that bigger picture, or the goals of the business, and then just quickly feature planning. So similar to some of the other storytelling frameworks that we've seen, explain the problem, then introducing the hero, what they would do with and without that solution, how it's going to improve their life, and then why now, why it matters, etc. I think we can share these slides after with you, because I know there's quite a lot of information on there. But I guess the common theme about it, about a lot of these storytelling frameworks, is that you start with a very clear problem, explain who's going to benefit from the solution, what the solution is, and then what the impact is, essentially. But there's some iterations and slight variations on that theme depending on how you use them. Then we've got aligning stakeholders from Ryan Bigg and Andy Healy. So they have got a piece in Medium about I think they did a conference in 22, I think for Confab. And here they've got a tweet, which I thought was good. So the thing that's missed when people talk about storytelling is that good storytellers can break down complex problems in ways that make people care and understand. Good storytellers bridge the mental model of systems and value. They know how to utilize markers in the story. So one way of doing that here might be that you've collected some customer stories, or you've done interviews, and particularly with that evaluation sort of type of research that I mentioned, you can show that there has been a difference, maybe before and after. Or if you're kind of doing discovery, you might sort of maybe think about what the concept could make a difference to them if they were to use it. Then choose the relevance. So just use one that connects with the wider discussion, frame the story. So you might sort of say, well, last week we spoke to so-and-so, and then they tried this, and then that was successful for them. That's why we should, and then you can kind of tie it in, and then you get some buy-in here. So it's asking the stakeholders for their reflections and things, rather than telling them. So I guess with storytelling, sometimes it's good to take people on the journey, as well as, but rather than telling them like exactly what you want them to do. Also, Ryan Bigg and Andy Healy, they speak about just how stories look like across an organization. So this is tiny, but it just kind of shows the connections just between lots of different types of stories within an organization. So for example, you've got like blog posts, and you might have like stand-ups and those kind of meetings that are happening all the time. So here it says there are individual stories, project stories, stories about what it's like to be a content designer, because I think they're talking about this in a design situation. Stories about the content team, internal stories, external stories, stories about how content design fits in with UX, stories within stories within stories. So they're just showing that within an organizational culture and structure, there's just so many stories, and sometimes these stories build on one another. But I thought that was interesting from a UX perspective, because you're getting internal stories, maybe from leadership and within your product team, and then you've got the external stories, which might come from market signals and customers. So there's just a couple of approaches that you could use here. So one is Anna Dahlström's approach, which is very similar to, you know, the storytelling frameworks that we've seen so far, which is understanding their world. But here it's sort of more sort of focused on the user. So mapping their journey, identify the turning point. So if this feature or product was to be around, how would it actually change maybe the customer experience, or what impact would it have on the customer? And then what would that look like from a design perspective? Also, Whitney Quesenbury, she turns UX research into human-centered stories that help to guide product decisions and design, if you wanted to look at that in a bit more depth. So in terms of your story, these are some stories to bear in mind, some questions to bear in mind if you're thinking about formulating your own story. So when I did the professional skills conference, the idea there was, I mean, it was more broad in terms of the audience. So there it's kind of getting them to kind of think about having a portfolio of stories for different situations. But in terms of finding your story and figuring out your story, these are some questions that might help. So what are the core concepts? What's the message? Who is the audience? Could it be relatable, retellable, kind of thinking about that peer piece from earlier? And what impact will it have on the listener? Are you trying to make them feel a certain way? Do you want them to take a certain action, for example? And also, there's this idea of star as well. So make your story something that they'll always remember, and there's different ways that you can do that. So make it engaging. So that's how you might deliver it. Also, I guess a common theme across all this is putting your audience first. So what is it that they want to get from the talk, and what value would they be receiving from it, and also what language will they be using or expecting you to use? So one tension that I suppose I've seen in terms of not necessarily product leadership, but in product, is between designers and leaders, and just having a shared business language. So if you're kind of new to product or design, but getting familiar with that language will definitely serve you and help you have that shared language, so then you can talk to your audience in a more kind of relatable way. Then there's the emotional aspect that I mentioned. Maybe using humor if it's relevant. Just having one idea rather than lots of ideas or lots of messages that you're trying to get across in a story. And then using personal stories. If you can bring in any customer quotations, for example, then that could be something that would help to make your case stronger. Also, when you're presenting your story, IDEO have got a really good blog post about this, which is how you would present your story in a impactful way. But I think the link on that is in the slide deck, which we can share after. So what I wanted to do is just for the next couple of minutes is in the chat, if you could explain or share one storytelling technique that you'll use in your next roadmap, or like maybe pitch or explanation or sprint planning session. So I'll just give you a minute to do that. Four C's, brilliant. Yeah, the story arc, yeah. Yeah, micro stories. Meg. Because I suppose from a research perspective, it is useful to pull out the themes, but to have all those small stories and quotations can be really useful. Yeah, the 4 C's again. Yeah, problem, agitate, solve. Yeah, brilliant. And yeah, feature planning. Awesome. Okay, just whilst we're kind of waiting for more to come through, I just wanted to kind of give you some key takeaways and tips. So the first one really is to practice using storytelling techniques and frameworks, and yeah, take people on that journey with you and things. But also, I guess one way you can kind of figure out if it's working for you is if you're getting the actions or outcomes that you intended and hope for. Also, bring the audience into the journey or onto the journey as much as you can. Because I found that particularly when I've wanted to, I guess, make the abstract tangible, or when I've had to feedback or consider insights and how it might affect a design or something, people don't really like being told what to do. They don't like that sort of approach. So I found that bringing people into the journey, into the fold, my thought process, like it could be this, it could be that, like this is my analysis, go through it and kind of bringing them into the journey. I found that has been helpful because they understand the story better because they've been part of it. Also helping your colleagues, maybe if you're coaching them or if you've got team members who might struggle to articulate what they want to do, or maybe if they're pitching something in a meeting, they might be able to use some of these storytelling techniques. So it could become the norm and help with communication within a team. And also adapting your story style to the situation and audience. So having the audience as really your barometer, I guess, in terms of how short it is, what method you might use, that would be important, just to ensure that they're going to be fully engaged. And also, if you're practicing using storytelling, maybe getting feedback on your storytelling approach. So with the reports that I mentioned, that a market researcher was putting together that she wanted to improve, she regularly got feedback on her reports. So because the intention and the aim was for people to read them and action them, because she was getting lots of information for the product team, for what was happening in the market with competition, trends in the future which might affect design and feature planning and things, and over time she just got so much feedback, and then that improved her report writing and storytelling. I've got a QR code here for a storytelling workbook in case you wanted that, so you can take a screenshot of it or wait for the slides to come through. And this is how we can help you. So if you wanted to rate your storytelling, we've got a scorecard here. I can do storytelling clinics if you've got a particular issue that you want to talk through, and that's totally free. Happy to kind of go through that on a call. We also do research and things, so if you wanted to maybe have help on doing research or experimentation and bringing those sort of micro stories or stories through, then we can help with that. And also, if you wanted any coaching on storytelling and how you're using it, we can help with that as well. Also, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that's my handle, like Dr. Chloe Sharp there. That's it. So do you want to go through some of the questions?
Yeah, we can go through some of the questions. Also, there's some feedback that the scorecard is password protected. So
okay, I'll sort that out.
Yeah, we should sort that out after. Yeah.
Cool.
Great. So let's go through as many of the questions as we can in the time we've got left. Thanks everyone for putting them up on Slido and upvoting them. So I have a nice running order of the most important questions. So the top one is, do you have one key takeaway to help people new to using storytelling?
Yeah, I think it would be making your audience central to the story that you're kind of telling. So recently with MKU, again, we did a business challenge, and then we asked the students to do a pitch, and that was quite interesting in how they approached that. They had 2 minutes, and they spent nearly all the 2 minutes on the problem, and they didn't really explain the solution at all. But I don't think that's necessarily, just an issue that happens in that situation. I've seen that happen in other, like professional situations, in meetings where people talk to the problem a lot, rather than all the other pieces in the story which we've covered today. So I think keeping it succinct and thinking about your audience.
Yeah, makes sense. And actually, the next question is about how you adapt your storytelling style for the audience. So I don't know if you wanted to go and give an example or anything like that related to this.
Yeah, so I think that's it's important to adapt and be adaptable in your style when you're doing storytelling. One of my colleagues is going to be doing a storytelling session, but more for fundraising and investment, because I think if you're pitching, there's the idea that you would just have one pitch deck, but it really is adapted and adaptable for the situations. Early on conversations versus more detailed conversations, and so the depth and the approach that you would use to storytelling, that would really change sort of depending on your situation. But I think from a product leadership perspective, I found that understanding the audience is really important, and talking their language and understanding the political sphere is also important for pitching your business case and things.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got some comments in here. So Joy said a lesson learned: the opening sentence grabs the attention of the audience is crucial. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so like the hook. Yeah, that's a good point. And how we close, so we have a really clear call to action. That's a good point. And Janie says, I think a great way to use stories is when answering questions following a presentation. Sometimes this is when people struggle, especially in senior leadership meetings. These simple frameworks help a lot. Yeah, and it helps you stick to the point, I think. That's good points there. Thank you.
The next question we've got on Slido is, how do you use AI tools with your writing, and what traps are there to rely on it too much?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, because with AI, it's like sometimes you can't remember what it said or why it said it. So if you put a copy and paste something, and then you have to explain it and why it's relevant and part of your case and the story, it can in some ways make it harder if you've just not double checked it. I think it's good for if you wanted to use one of these frameworks, you could ask it in the prompt, I want to use the hero's journey for my report, for example. So it might help you structure things and maybe coach you through applying it. So I think it can be useful in that way.
Great. Yeah, the next one, I think you've covered somewhat, but feel free to add some more color to it. The poster says, thanks for sharing various storytelling methodologies. Can you share any real life examples of storytelling, like presentations or pitches?
I was trying to think. I think the one that I use the most probably when I speak about making a business case through grants. So I use the analogy, which is like a tree. So the trunk is the main narrative, and then the branches are kind of spinning out. So you would kind of go into more detail on different aspects of the story, but it all is succinct and it sort of is all aligned. So then when it's the same as well for business cases and pitches. You don't want any new information and a surprise at the end. You want it to have all been sort of said right at the very top and sort of outlined your story clearly, and then gone through it in detail in the different sections, so it has that structure. And so I think in that kind of report business case situation, it's really important.
Great. Yeah, that's a great analogy. Bex said it as well in the chat. Yeah, it's easy to fall into the trap of going down rabbit holes and not talking about what the core of the narrative is.
Yeah, definitely.
The next one is an interesting one. I think is going to be really useful for those of us job hunting at the moment. How can you adapt storytelling in an interview to effectively pitch your accomplishments?
I think that takes planning and practice, if I'm honest, as well. I think like outlining what you think would be the strongest stories to accentuate your strengths, or to show examples. But I think when you're explaining the example is to maybe use that storytelling technique. So outline the problem, what was the what was that rising action, like the climax, and then the denouement. If you use that approach, I think that would really clearly explain your example in that interview situation, and it might stop you from maybe going down some rabbit hole around, or a tangent, which sometimes, if you're nervous in an interview, sometimes that can happen. But I think maybe having that arc in mind could help to frame examples, and practicing it a little bit more ahead of time.
Yeah, definitely. Practice makes perfect with all of this stuff around storytelling. It's really important to practice it so it lands properly. And actually, that's a perfect segue into the next question. I didn't plan this. How do you tell if your story is landing?
I think getting a read on the audience, if they've understood, I guess, and also the questions that you're getting, if maybe they have to clarify things, or they seem confused. I guess you kind of might get a read from them. But I think getting as much feedback as possible. Sometimes it can be difficult to receive feedback, but if it's to help you develop, and which it's usually in the spirit of, I think that can help refine and just make sure that your audience is getting the message that you're looking for. But I guess in terms of in the moment, seeing if it is landing, it's just reading the audience. Like, are they seeming engaged? Are they looking bored? What kind of questions are they asking?
Yeah, Meg is asking how to get a read on the audience on a Zoom, isn't it?
That's hard. It is hard. Yeah. You don't get the body language. No.
Great, cool. I think we've gone through quite a few questions. We'll probably stop there. We just have one small question for you all at the end, if you could take the time to answer it. This helps us measure our impact for our events, how much value people are getting out of these events. Catherine, if you can pop it up, there we go. We'd appreciate if you could spend a couple of minutes filling that in. It's really valuable for us, and thank you so much for coming to the event today. I hope you found it useful. I hope you're taking away some great frameworks you can use in your day-to-day. I will put the recording and the materials that Dr. Sharp will be sharing on our website, so you can see them there and refer back to them. Thank you so much, Chloe, for joining us today. And for sharing all of this such useful information around storytelling.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it, and I hope it's been of use.
Great. We'll just leave this up for a minute or two so people can fill it in, but feel free to drop if you're all done. And hope to see you at our next events. We've got so many coming up.